Hello, welcome back, or welcome for the first time to Openly Spoken. Today's guest is Caitlin Rose. We talked to her about exactly a year ago when we talked about the distortions of polarity. And this time we are talking about whether or not to make the choice of being child-free. And we talked a little bit about our decisions behind being child-free by choice. We weighed out a couple of pros and cons. And yeah, it was a very beautiful, unfiltered conversation. I'm very excited to share it with you. But first, let me introduce you to Caitlin. Caitlin Rose is a visionary photographer, facilitator, and coach dedicated to empowering female identifying individuals to feel more safe, confident, and sexy in their own skin. And depending on when you are watching this or listening to this, Caitlin is about to switch into uh, also serving queer relationships and helping them feel closer to each other. So, depending on when you are coming across this, that is what Caitlin does for work. And you can find her Instagram link in the show notes below. And yeah, I'm very excited to share this episode with you. I love that. That's a really good one. Good for grounding. I'm recording already.
Perfect. We entered the time portal, baby, where it just time is illusory, it doesn't exist.
Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen within your relationships, your work, and most importantly, with the relationship with yourself. In this podcast, we talk about all things self-love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, and more. Hi, I'm your host, Celia Antonio, and I'm a women's sexuality and self-love coach, a mindfulness expert, and your cheerleader for your most grounded and expansive self-expression. You can connect with me on Instagram at selfexpressedbabe, and for all of my guest episodes, there will always be links in the show notes so that you can find them online. I give my deepest thanks to you for being here and spending your precious time with me today. Now let's begin our journey. The countdown is always a little awkward. I'm like, 3, 2, 1.
It's like
Action.
when you're waiting on Zoom for the other person's audio to come on and you're just sitting there like,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah. Or when you both say bye and there's that awkward limbo of like figuring out how to leave. It's like
I
that.
love that. Or when you're doing a self-timed photo with
Yeah.
like
And you're like,
yourself or a group and you accidentally have hit 10 seconds and you're like, hold
oh,
so
yeah.
long. Best, and you look so awkward.
Yeah.
Just
That's so
embrace
funny.
it.
Well, thank you for coming back on the podcast. And I realized like last week that around this time last year, I also had you on. So I don't know, is this gonna be a tradition?
Yeah, the annual podcast visit. It could be. Yeah, that's so interesting. It was a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a year ago. I remember last year, like I think it might have been the last podcast episode that I released was where we talked about polarity and like the distortions within polarity. And then I took like a big podcasting break for like 4 or 5 months.
Right. Love that.
Yeah.
Necessary to take breaks from these things.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the choice to be child-free and all the things within that. And this is a conversation that I've been having a lot. So I'm very excited. I actually sat down and like wrote a couple of notes of like things that came up in conversation recently, like with other friends to maybe like weave those into our conversation. So firstly, I guess I'll ask you, have you chosen to be child-free? Are you like in limbo of like, which one do I want to decide, or where are you standing on that choice right now?
Yeah, I felt kind of nervous coming on here, even though like I've made the choice to not have kids. Like it felt really nervous I felt really nervous because this felt like a really like kind of public claiming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it felt
Yeah.
like a real like solidification. Like obviously, not obviously, I have chosen to not have kids, and my partner feels the exact same. And I went through a phase like when I was coming up to turning 30. I'm about to turn 33, where I felt this really strong like maternal desire to have kids coming up when I was living in a different state. And my
Mm.
best friend got pregnant around then, and I was like, oh, like I really want to as well. And like it was a real thing for me there for a bit. And then I came back to like where I'm living now in Melbourne, and it sort of was there for a bit, and then it slowly started to go away. And I've noticed it's just gotten stronger, the desire to not have them now. And it's like I'm now seeing enough external examples from like my friends having kids, and like just the
Mm.
different values and like things that I have for my life that are like now being like affirming my decision essentially. So I feel I'm still open to it changing because it has changed for me, like as I've said, but I right now it feels like probably an 80% no, where that's the strongest it's been.
Mm. Yeah. I can so relate that when I was around 30, I was also like, when I was 30, I had just recently gotten engaged to my now husband, and I was like ready to have babies with him. And he was like, let's slow down. Like, let's have kids in 5 years. And I'm like, 5 years? That's so far. And like, for the whole 5 years, I was like, you ready to have a baby yet? And it's only until this year that I've stepped into like just feeling into more and more of like not wanting a child.
Mm.
Um, it first came for me as like a question while I was on a walk of just like, what if I don't have kids? And then I just like felt all these emotions just randomly, like just was like, what if I don't have kids? And in hindsight, I think that was my body being like, oh, I don't have to do that. Thank fucking God.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, it's such a big part of like societal expectation as a woman, right? To like,
Yes.
yeah, have kids eventually. And like one thing for me is like I can feel the pressure from my mum because I'm her only
Uh,
child. So like my dad has other kids and they have like he has grandkids. And so mum technically has like grandkids.
yeah.
But I am her only child, so I can feel this like pressure coming from her. And I have like not she's not saying anything. I can just kind of feel that she's obsessed with babies, like the cluckiest person ever when there is a baby around. And so I know that she would like adore it if I had one. But
Mm,
yeah, I've just had to like put that over there, and I'm like, that is not like it's not my responsibility to have a child just to like meet her needs. Do you know what I mean? Like I need
yeah,
to really come back to
definitely.
myself and what I'm wanting.
Hmm. And do you love babies and or children? No?
No, and do you know what? Like I feel like I really try with like one of my best friends has a baby, he's nearly 2, and like I've made a really big effort to like push through the unnatural desire that I have. Like my other best friend, when we're there, she is like a natural with babies, and I'm just like I have to make an effort, like a conscious effort to like talk to the child. And like they're all right when they get a little bit older, like when they're like 5 or 6. I started to notice with another friend's kids, I was like, oh, I could just hang out with them. Like they're starting to like be
Hmm.
more like not adults obviously, but you can have conversations with them and like do things with them. But when they're younger, I'm like, I don't even know what to do with you.
Hmm.
And I just like laugh at myself, but I used to like shame or wrong that. I'm like, why am I not just naturally good with kids? And it wasn't until I met my partner who's the exact same. And they kind of just like gave me permission to just like let that be there and not make that like wrong or mean anything other than like that. So now it's just like a bit of a funny thing. So I'm like I don't dread it. Like I love my best friend's son, but yeah, I definitely have to move into a different version of me that's not natural.
Yeah. So then did that maybe make it easier to be like, yeah, I'm not gonna have children?
I
Or do you
think
think it'd be
so.
different, like if it's your own child?
I think it'd be different. Like I think
Yeah.
there would be some like like natural. If I've grown it, especially inside my belly, like I think
Yeah.
that would be make it very different. But I'm also in a queer relationship, so it's like it's a not something that can just like happen or like accidentally
Mm,
happen and you have to
yeah.
deal with it. It's like it would need to be a conscious choice. My
Hmm.
partner would definitely not carry a baby. So like I think if we decided to have one and I like grew it inside me, then I think there would be some like natural motherly tendencies that would likely come on board then. But I'm like, I don't think that's for me. Hey,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
what
the
about you?
complete I'm the complete opposite of you. Like I
Really?
love babies and I love small kids, but once they get to around age 7, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Oh my God.
I
That's so funny.
I used to work in a daycare and I've babysat a lot and I'm the oldest of 3 other siblings and 2 of them that I grew up with and I babysat them like all the time. So like I actually love babies. I adore babies and like I think babies are tricksters. I feel like they're tricksters when I'm around them because if a baby's around me, I'm like, oh my God, I want to have a baby. But then when I stop and
Wow.
think about what that actually means, and I think about the facts, not only of what my body would go through, because like adoption is also a thing that I would be open to, but just like the actual solid facts of like what that would mean for my life. That's when I'm like, I don't know if I want that.
Totally. It's like a massive commitment. Like I've
Yeah.
watched my best friend go through, like she's someone that's like really ambitious, has her own business, and like watching her go through that transitional period where she didn't have the space to do everything that she used to do. Like she has a boy who is very high energy and like demanding and like just chaotic. Is so funny. But yeah, just watching her go through it, like I definitely want other things for myself and my like in this lifetime, you know. But also like we've spoken about if that desire did come up to like maybe have something like you said the adoption, like we've talked about possibly fostering as well, like if there was a need that
Yeah.
needed to be fulfilled in that way, then that would be possibly something that
Yeah.
we'd look into. But that's also going to come with like a lot more stuff to work through, I think. Like you don't know like what
Yeah.
you're getting, you know, like or who's going to rock up.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a call with a couple of friends, and one of them said that adoption feels like parenting, but like the really extremely hard version.
Mm,
And fostering is probably the same because then you have things like birthdays probably being a day that's like full of sadness instead of celebration.
yeah,
And like
totally.
your child also has like a whole another family out there, whether they meet them or not. And then just for, for fostering, it's definitely, I would say, way different than if you're adopting a baby, for example, because if you're fostering someone who's 10, like you don't know where they've been for the first 10 years of their life or what they've gone through. Yeah, that's
Totally.
very hard job. I'm going to turn on the light in here because the sun's going down.
No worries. Yeah, and I've watched another one of my friends also went through that, like fostering. It was a bit of a situation where it was like, can you have these kids for a week? And they just never came back and got them. So they just ended up with this like I think the child was like 1, the baby, and then the girl was like 6 or 7, and like massive behavioral problems, like very traumatized from their like parents essentially. And but you get no information. You just like here's these children, like
Mm,
you need to figure out everything to do with them, you know, and they had like issues with food and like it was just a whole thing. So yeah, it would be a lot more to deal with. Like I think you said like getting a baby might be a bit different, but like a child
mm,
that's already had quite a big experience of life and like trauma essentially, like it would just be so much more to navigate.
yeah, yeah. And that takes a lot for an adult to be raising a kid who's gone through trauma, like from an unknown source.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to meet your own self with those emotions. And like most people can't do that. You know?
Totally. Yeah. And you don't know what their triggers are going to be, right? Like
Yeah,
it could be anything.
exactly. Yeah. What do you think about people who say that like a reproduction or like the need to reproduce is like built into us or is like an instinct? Have you heard
Yeah, I
that
don't
before?
know. Yeah, I've definitely heard it before. I don't know if I've spent a lot of time like thinking about it. I think there's probably, I mean, how do we know really? Like, I think there probably is a natural
True.
instinct in like us as women. I know one of my friends said that when she also started to get towards 30, like whenever she would get her bleed, she'd have grief. She was like grieving
Mm,
that she wasn't pregnant yet. So I think maybe there is some kind of natural
mm.
instinct within us with like our reproductive organs and stuff. But I also think like a lot of it is like societal expectation and pressure as a culture to do that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before with the grief and the bleed.
Mm,
And I've experienced that myself as well. And
wow.
I do think a lot of it is societal expectation because just from my own experience, like I remember adults saying things like, "Oh, when you have kids," or like one day when you're a mom, and like
Mm,
nobody really flinches at that. Like that's just something we do. We just like assume that everyone wants to have kids and wants to have their
totally.
quote own family, which is another thing that I think is really weird.
Yeah.
It's like when you get a certain age, you're like suddenly, what, are you not a part of the family you came from? And now you have to like have a kid to feel a sense of belonging to a family?
Totally. Yeah, and especially in your 30s, like that's been my experience. I can feel the like I think 20s, I can't remember, there's like, like we have different healthcare, but there's like health insurance and stuff. There's like cutoff dates with like your parents as to like how long you
Oh,
can
yeah.
stay on that for.
I
And I
think
think
here
it's
it's like
like,
27 or 28 or something.
yeah, I think ours is 25. So like similar age.
Okay.
So I think for me it was like when I started to get like towards 30 or in the 30s, that's when I started to feel that like real like, oh, I don't really feel like I belong in like I still feel like I belong with my parents because I'm an only child, but yeah, I feel like there's this like disconnect into like you now need to go out and have yours. And I can feel it the I'm about to turn 33 as I said. I can feel it the like older I get, I can feel that like, oh my, like I'm not going to be able to have kids soon, even though I've chosen not to. Like I can feel
Yeah.
that like pressure that's
Yeah.
been like embedded into us, right?
Yeah. I feel it too. I'm turning 35 in December and I sometimes feel the like, oh, I'm 5 years away from 40 and then like really the time is going to start to be running out if I change my mind. So
Yeah.
I have thought of that, but I do feel pretty solid that I don't want a biological child. That like if I did happen by whatever miracle to change my mind, which is like honestly I'm like 99% no, I will not have kids and there's a 1% part of me that's like maybe I will adopt
Yeah.
because I just don't want to put my body through everything that goes along with pregnancy and birth. And I think no one knows what that entails because it's not talked about. And like every woman you talk to has a different experience. And over
Definitely.
the years, the more I hear and the more I'm told about like certain health issues that some of my friends have that started in pregnancy and like was because their baby was putting pressure on certain organs and then they have this like health issue for the rest of their life.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't want to put my body through that.
no. This is really interesting for me to hear like your perspective as to like why you've chosen not to, because mine's come from more of a I it's an investment financially. I don't want to, I have other things that I want to do with my life and like
Yeah,
travel and all this stuff that doesn't include a child. But it's like, I'd love to hear more about like has yours come mostly from like a health and a body like perspective?
it is that. And there's more to that, but it's also a freedom perspective, which
Mm,
kind of bleeds into finances, but also bleeds into like I just got my green card and
yeah.
I have not been able to like freely travel the world for the last 31 years. And now
Wow.
I finally am able to. So I'm like, why would I have a kid?
That makes
And
so
I've
much
said
sense.
that in a previous episode. Like I recorded a solo episode where I talked about this and it's already live. And I've had people in the comments be like, you can just take your kid with you. And I'm like, yeah, but that sounds awful. That doesn't sound fun at all.
It's not really a holiday. And until they probably get, I mean, you don't like kids at this age, but I was going to say when they start to get a little bit older, they can be a little bit more independent and do their own thing on holidays. But when they're under
Yeah.
like 5, like they are glued to you.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, like, I think because I really love babies and I have a lot of compassion for babies, I don't mind if there's a crying baby on a plane, but I don't want to be the person with the crying baby. Like, I feel like that experience will be mortifying because I'm like, everyone in this plane hates me right now. And there's nothing I can do because this child's like ears are popping or like whatever else they're feeling. Yeah.
Totally. I personally can't stand them. I don't mind if they're like towards the back and it's kind of like a muffled thing. I just wear my noise cancelling headphones on planes regardless anymore anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think if they're close to me, I'm like it's hard because I like logically I'm like they're just expressing emotion. Like I want them to do that. Like I fully get it from like a
Yeah.
body perspective, but then I'm just like, he's sharp. Like we're stuck on this. I've had enough. I hate flying as it is. Like, can you not make it worse?
Yeah. Flying is really uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I know it is for them too, but like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Another piece with the body part is that I feel like I'm at a really good relationship space with my body right now. Like I just
Mm.
fully love and accept so many parts of my body that I used to judge, like my breasts, for example. And like
Mm.
going through pregnancy would completely change them. And like that would be hard to go through. Like, would I be okay?
Totally. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of women that have had to like very much transform how they feel about their bodies after birth because like everything changes. Even if you like
Yeah.
have, like a small baby and you don't have stretch marks, like you still go through changes, right? Like even like giving birth or like yeah, like
Yeah.
breastfeeding, like there's always going to be some.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say when I think about breastfeeding a baby, and I don't know if this is gross, but like breastfeeding sounds really fun. Like I
Fun.
feel, yeah, like I feel this like primal instinct of like, I want to do that. Like that sounds like, I don't know, there's something like animalistic about it where I'm like, yeah, I want to like breastfeed.
I get that. I've never thought of it like that before, but I get that. I think I've seen too many, like, I literally saw someone's story yesterday that was like, I have like cracked, dry nipples,
Oh,
like my baby bites.
yeah.
Like, I've heard more of that, so I'm like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen the Halloween costumes that some women do where like their baby is dressed up as a shark and then they're just wearing like a white shirt with like red dripping
No, but I
down?
need to. You need to send me that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I have to find that.
Oh, so good. I'd love to hear one thing I'd love to hear when I was thinking about this podcast. I was like, thinking about my experience with my friends when they get pregnant. I'd love to hear like your experience
Mm,
if you've had like much coming up around that or if you've had that experience.
yeah, so my best friend is pregnant right now.
Wow.
She's 5 months pregnant. She does live in a different state, but when I move, I'll be closer that I'll be able to like drive down to visit her, like it'd be, or just take a short flight. And I'm really excited because
Mm.
I, have experience with babies and stuff before.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be there for her. And then other friends that I've never had like a super close friend have kids, but other friends where we weren't that close, like once they had kids, I felt like their life got too busy or like I couldn't relate to them. And I'm not sure if it was me feeling like, oh, I'm not a mom, so like I'm not enough
Mm.
to be your friend, or if it was they're just way too busy. Like I don't know what it was. Maybe it was both. Um,
Mm.
and it is kind of a grief in a way when a friend has a kid and like they don't have the resources to have childcare, and you know that every time you hang out with them or every time you talk to them on FaceTime that their kid's always going to be in the background. Like that kind of sucks. Like I understand it, but it's also kind of like, oh man, like I miss you before.
Mm,
I'd
yeah.
love to know
I,
your experience with that.
yeah, I've mostly had the last bit that you shared, like, you know, very not present phone calls, which I also understand because they don't have much
Yeah,
choice
that's
in the
hard
matter.
too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you hang out, I my best friend that has a baby's in another state as well. So like it's been hard in some ways with phone calls, and like it's harder to organize phone calls, and there's just so much more to kind of consider, but it's not
Yeah.
been too bad because I'm not with her all the time. But when I am with her, it's like, yeah, like the child is going to mostly be there. We do try and make a bit of a point to spend like quality time together, like the baby will go with the partner or something like that when I am up
Mm-hmm.
there. But my experience has mostly been like I've got two friends that are pregnant right now, and when I find out that they're pregnant, it's like, this is going to sound so bad, but it feels like, oh well, it's the beginning of the end of our friendship in a way,
Oh
because it's like
no.
it does transform. Like one of my friends that
Yeah.
is just like, I think she's 12 weeks now. I used to go to gigs with them. Like we used to go to like emo nights and stuff. I was like, great. Like I don't have a kid buddy anymore. Like that's how it is for me. Cause it's like, it
Yeah.
transforms the whole relationship, which I get it needs to in
Yeah.
a way, cause they're going through a transition, but it's like, yeah, I don't view it in a very positive way initially. That's for sure.
Yeah, there are definitely things you just can't go to anymore when you have kids. I mean, you could if you go through a ton of hoops,
Yeah,
which like also requires like resources, and like you're not going to do that every weekend or every week. So, yeah, that makes sense. And
totally.
that's also a big part for me why I don't want kids. I'm like, I have two cats, and like it's already annoying to find a cat sitter when I travel. I don't want to worry about kids' school, their homework, like their babysitting. Are they coming with me? Like,
Yeah.
no. And I know people listening would be like, yeah, but you could figure all that out. I don't want to figure that out.
Totally. It's like another stress. I'm the exact same. I just do not want to have to deal with that. And
Yeah.
another point that you just mentioned, is I also have two cats, and I am by no means comparing looking after a cat to a baby. I know that
Yeah.
they are completely different ballparks, but similar thing. Like you still have to consider them when you go away. You can't just leave
Yeah.
them. You could probably leave them for like a day or two, but you can't
Yeah.
leave them for very long. You have to get someone in to look after them. And I was like, that is just going to be amplified if I was to have a baby. It would be like 10
Yeah.
times worse.
Yeah. Exactly. And then
And I
once they're in
also,
school, oh, go ahead.
you go. No, you go.
Once they're in school, there's only like certain days of the year or times of the year that they are free from school. So then it's like you're kind of trapped in wherever you live.
Totally. And then you have to go on holidays, in school holidays, which is the worst time.
Which
Like my
is
partner and
worse.
I,
Yeah,
yeah,
like your
we
kids
literally,
are not getting babysat for free at school.
no, totally. Oh, it's so liberating having this conversation with someone who is on the same page, because I don't have like, besides my partner, like I don't really have, everyone else is like having kids or is planning on having them, you know?
Yeah.
But my partner and I like plan our date nights or days around whether it's school holidays, around the time or day or everything that it has to do with, like, if we, because we want to go do stuff that kids are sometimes involved in, like, you know, like
Yeah.
little adventure parks and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
like, we just make sure we go. Like, I will research like a Reddit thread or something as to like when is the quietest time to go to something like this, just so there's not kids there. Because I don't enjoy it when there's kids
Yeah.
there, you know?
I've never
Um,
thought of that, of like, don't go to the water parks when kids are on vacation. That makes so much
yeah,
sense because everyone's
yeah,
going to be there.
totally. I only know when the school holidays are because of this.
That is such a great tip. Thank you for sharing that.
That's so welcome. Also, the other thing I was going to say before is like, I'm sure that there is like so much fulfillment and love that can come from having a child. but I don't think what you have to sacrifice and deal with and pay for outweighs that from what I have witnessed. Like that's been a big
Same.
one for me too.
Yeah, same. And in a way, I kind of feel robbed of being able to have that experience because when I think about, when I was born in the 80s, it was just easier to have a child and to pay for a child. Like my mom was 18 years old when she had me and she did it. And like she was
Mm.
fine. But like having a kid at 18 now, I don't think is as easy as it was in 1989.
No, definitely not. And also, like, I think it was more of a like standard thing back then. Like, like you could live
Yeah,
off
that
like
too.
one wage, like housing was,
Yeah,
everything was cheaper. Like it was such a
yeah,
different reality. So like, when we were born, it's like, yeah, super different then. Now it's like, the cost of living's gone up. Like it's almost impossible to buy housing. Like everything's dearer. Like it's just not as feasible, I don't think, from what I've witnessed.
yeah. Yeah, and that's like for me, it feels very freeing to come to the decision of I'm going to be child free because then I
Mm.
don't have to stress about like, am I going to be able to afford a house? Because I feel like, I mean, yeah, it's good for anyone to buy a house, but I would say, and maybe you can tell me if you agree or disagree, that like having a baby is like probably a big reason why a lot of people buy a home to have that like stable space for them to grow. Would you
Totally.
agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I get that. Like I get that logic. It's just like, this is gonna be their home. We don't have to stress about it. I personally don't see the value in buying a home. That's another topic, but it's like for me, it's like one of my friends that I just found out was pregnant that I just mentioned before. Like they have a home and I got her to write me a pros and cons list one day because I was genuinely like, she's the only person I know that owns a home. So
Hmm.
it's like, can you just let me know like what they are? There's no way the pros was going to outweigh like the cons. Like it was like, there's no way I'm doing this. And then I watched like when the rates and stuff started going up over COVID over here and like how much extra they were paying on their mortgage and stuff. I was like, I don't value this at all. Like I know renting
Yeah.
has limitations, but like as far as buying, like not gonna happen. And it's
Hmm.
near impossible in Australia right now. Like it's insane. Houses are
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Over here, it's crazy too. I'm in Los Angeles, so the prices are like astronomical. That's part of why we're moving
Yeah.
because even rent is getting insane. Um, yeah, that's so interesting that she sent you a pros and cons list. I'm
Yeah.
curious
And like
if you, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the pros were just like, you have the freedom to do what you like in the property. Like you can put stuff, you don't have to ask permission, like all of that. And I'm like, yeah, but like how I don't really care about not having stuff on the walls. Like if there's something broken, I
Hmm.
get to email the real estate and they will deal with all of it. Like I don't have to
Yeah, it's
worry
kind of
about
nice to be like, hey, there's a crack in the wall randomly because we had an earthquake today. Can you come fix it? Whereas, like, if you own it, you got to fix that yourself.
Totally. And they don't. That's the thing. Is
And
like you can't
yeah,
call the landlord because they are the landlord.
yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah.
this guy named, his channel is Adam Ruins Everything. Have you heard of him?
No.
He's an American guy. He talked about, he like ruins things. And one of the things that he ruined was home ownership. And he talks about how when you transition from renting to owning, you're just replacing your landlord with a bank. And like your bank is now your landlord, except you're like that landlord is not going to come fix stuff for you.
That's so true. That's such an interesting way to look at it. Because like they don't own the home anyway, do they? They have mortgages
Yeah. Yeah.
which come from the bank.
Yeah. And then what I find alarming is witnessing some people that I know who like own their home already. They've lived there for a while, but then homes in the neighborhood have sold for a higher price, which makes all of the homes in the neighborhood worth more, which makes your property taxes go up. And then if you can't afford your property tax, guess who has to move now?
Oh my God. I didn't
So
even
like
like
it's
look at
not
it from that
even,
perspective.
yeah, once I learned that, I was like, oh, I thought that like it was like a stable thing that like you could live there forever, but you can't.
No, you don't even own it. Like, really?
But even if you did, you're still paying property taxes every year. And if the property tax got to a point where you can't afford it, then you have to worry about selling your house and moving.
Oh my God. I think we call it rates here. I think that's the same thing though. It's like,
Okay.
is it like you're paying for like different things like the like rubbish bin system and like things like that? Is that what that is for you guys?
The property tax here is based on the value of your home, and it pays for like schools in the neighborhood, like
Okay.
road maintenance and stuff.
Okay.
Um, and by the way, I'm not a real estate expert, so if any real estate people are
Neither am I, clearly.
watching or listening and they're like, "That's wrong," feel free to correct me in the comments.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm actually not super sure what rates pay for either, but I also don't care because I'm not gonna own a home.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious if you've made a pros and cons list for having kids or not having kids.
Not on paper, I haven't. I feel like I have
Okay,
in my head though. I feel like
okay.
I think that'd be pretty much all cons. There might be like you have this cute little mini version of you that you get to love and like mold into this like great human and teach them things. That would probably be the only thing on there, but then the rest is just
Yeah.
downhill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have
I
you?
made a pros and cons list in July,
Wow.
and I don't remember how many pros I put, but the cons list was just like on and on and on. Like I kept thinking of stuff. Let me see if I
Oh
can
my
pull it
God,
up.
I would love to hear it.
I don't know which email I put it. Let's see, pros and cons. Pros and cons. Okay, it's not in this account. Let me check my other.
That's okay.
I
I'd
wrote it on
also,
Google Drive, like Google Docs, so
oh yeah, it should be easy
it's
to find
somewhere
if you get
here.
the word right.
Yeah. Oh, please let me find you. Oops. Um. Oh, here. It's called Reasons Not to Have Kids.
I feel like you were setting yourself up for that without before you even started it. My name is
Yeah,
that.
I know, right? Instead
It's
of pros and
brilliant.
cons, it's just reasons not to have kids. That's
All
hilarious.
right, read it out.
Okay, so there are 67 reasons to not have kids, so I won't read all of them.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then for reasons to have kids, so pros, I came up with 13 of them. Um,
Okay.
so the first reason I put was your child could have special needs and end up needing a lot more resources and attention than you expected. And like that's
Mm,
not anything you have control over. And
totally.
like that would be very hard for you as the parent and also for them as a person existing in society that
Mm,
like isn't easy to exist in if you have special needs. So that was one thing I thought of.
definitely.
Yeah. I also always think of like if I had a child who was like non-binary or even queer, like the world is not kind to people who are not
Ooh.
like heteronormative. And like that would be very heartbreaking to see.
Mm,
Like I feel like I could parent someone with that kind of identity really well, but like I would have so much anxiety sending them out into the world.
definitely. I feel like I would have so much anxiety sending them out into the world for any reason anyway. Just like sometimes when my
Yeah.
partner goes to work, I'm like, I really hope they don't get into a car accident today. Do you know what I
Oh
mean? Like
my
imagine if
gosh.
that was a like that's probably just my like paranoia anxiety, but it's like imagine if you had this child to send that
Yeah.
out to the world, the scary world every day. Like there would just be so much more anxiety there.
Yeah, I definitely feel like in general, my general levels of anxiety would be completely heightened if I now had a child to worry about.
Mm, yeah.
Because they're not on like, yes, they're not going to be a baby or a child forever, but even when they're an adult, like there's someone out there in the world who's like off at college or like off living their own life that like you don't know what could happen to them. And I feel like
No.
I'd have had a lot of anxiety about that.
Knowing how I was also as a teenager and like when I was growing up, like the decisions that I made, like I know that they would have to go through like their own journey and initiation and whatnot, but I would be very paranoid.
Yeah. Yeah. I also personally just assume that I would have a really hard time with postpartum depression because I'm a very sensitive person and I feel like the lack of sleep,
Oh
the
yeah.
the traumatizing experience of birth and like like from friends who have had kids, you've probably heard that like you have to wake up every 2 or 3 hours when they're first born to feed them every 2 or 3 hours to get them up to the weight that they were when they were born, like to their birth weight. And like just all of that, I'm like, I feel like I would have a psychotic break. Like something in me would like snap and I would
Yeah,
not be okay.
I would be the exact same. Like, I really value sleep too. And
Yeah.
so does my friend that has the nearly 2-year-old. Like, and she really struggled with it when that was all happening. He's a pretty good sleeper now, but yeah, at the start, she was just like not coping very well. So I would be the exact same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Should
I'm
I
like
read
a
a
menace. If I haven't had enough sleep, I like to my partner, if I get woken up once in the middle of the night for like
yes.
2 minutes, I am not a very nice person. So like
Yeah.
imagine if that was your child that like you had to feed from your breasts. Like
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. My
rough.
husband gets up really early for work at like 4 a.m. and sometimes he'll like try to cuddle with me. And I'm always like, what the fuck? Like my initial reaction is to just get mad that someone's bothering me.
Yeah, I get that. I can relate.
I'm like a bear. Yeah, so imagine with a child, you like traumatize your kid because they're like, Mom, I had a bad dream. You're like, what the fuck?
Get back to bed. No, I wouldn't be that bad.
I think something in your mind and chemistry probably shifts once you have a baby like that.
Totally.
Yeah. I've heard
I
that
believe
you
that.
sleep like lighter and you're like more on like alert. That sounds anxiety
Yeah, that
inducing too.
does not sound good.
Yeah, that does not sound good. Okay, I think I
No.
should read a pro so that our conversation isn't super negative.
Yes.
Um, I wrote watching my partner be a dad. I feel like that would be really sweet. And
That would be so sweet.
and I don't like thinking about that because I'm like, oh, I want that. And then I'm like, my hormones are tricking me.
Yeah, they are. I've thought about that as well because, like, again, not the same thing at all. But I watch my partner with our cats, and I'm like, you
Yeah.
would be the best. I don't know if they would be called mum or dad because they're non-binary.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we've interchanged them both, and I normally will call them mom dad, but I think that they would be like a really good parent as well. But it's not enough for me.
Yeah, it's not enough. I also like when I think about the role of, I'm not sure if if these roles also have a play in queer relationships. I would love to know your experience of them. But like the role of mom and dad, I feel like there's a lot more pressure on the role of mom that I'm like, can I just be a dad? Like I'll do that.
Or you can in a way, like my partner's, this is again societal roles, like my partner's parents are like heteronormative people, parents, and her mum went to work and her dad stayed home with her and looked after her. So it's like,
Yeah, okay.
I guess that part of it is, I mean, there's obviously, if you're breastfeeding, all of that comes into play like early on, but I think
Yeah.
that there is ways to kind of like, yeah, play with those like gender roles and whatnot when it comes to parenting. I think when it comes to queer, I don't know, one of my ex-partners is in a relationship with a woman and they had a child together. And I think just depends on the couple, I think, but there is normally more of a like, not always, but generally more of a like butchy, I guess, person in the dynamic, which is normally more of the dad role. But I think from what I've seen, most people still get called mum. So it's like two mums, but there might be like, yeah, but you can kind of play with that in those.
Yeah.
You can play
Yeah.
with it in any.
Yeah.
There's no rules.
I also would, this isn't possible for me because I'm already married to someone without kids, but I also would be open to being a stepmom.
Mm.
Because it's like kids you only have like on the weekends or something. Well, hopefully not on the weekends. That kind of ruin your weekends, but
Yeah, like every second weekend for like a night or two.
yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't mind that either because it's also like they're not your full responsibility in the sense
Yeah.
of like, you know, you're not, well, everyone would be different, but you're not the sole person like teaching them how to live and be a human, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not for me. What else is on the pros list? Let's have another pro.
Okay, let's have another pro. Oh, I love the way I worded this. I wrote, witnessing a little bean grow up and explore the world, learn things, and become an adult.
Oh, that's really sweet. Oh, I
Little
love that.
bean. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really great, wouldn't it? Just like, I have this with my cat. It's the only reference I have. It's like I had one of my cats from when I had both of them from when they were a kitten, but one of them from like when it was literally the day it was born. And so,
Aww.
like, yeah, just watching it grow up and its like brain starts to develop and it's nearly 2. So, like, moving out of the kitten phase and like you can just watch it happening. Like, it would be so cool with a human to
Yeah.
witness that. You get
Yeah.
really proud of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've witnessed that when I used to babysit and work in a daycare. Like just like seeing the kids like do something new that they couldn't do before. Or like seeing a child, for example, I remember this like little boy was struggling with a hula hoop at the daycare I worked at. And he like gave up and he's like, I can't do it. And I'm like, yes, you can. Like, here's like, I gave him like some tips, a little pep talk. And then like he did it and he was like so excited about it. And I'm like, I just know that kind of exchange would just be even better if it's like your own child.
Yeah, that's really sweet. Little humans. Yeah, yeah, it would be very different. And like when they make like art and like, oh,
Yeah.
just be
Yeah.
so sweet.
Yeah. I also love how present babies are. Like,
Yeah, they're so present.
they're so present, and like I could just have a staring contest with a baby for like ever, but like when you do that, it's like you're staring into the universe because they're like just came from wherever we all came from, and they're like so fresh and they don't have all the conditioning yet, and I don't know, I love that.
I actually do like that as well. Like I look at them like that. I stare at them like they're this little alien that's just come from like God knows where and they've just come into this like crazy world. And like I try and connect with them in that way when I do as well. I'm like, yeah, you know.
Yeah. 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 It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Maybe one more con.
Okay.
Okay.
I feel like I want to go write a list after this.
Okay. A con I wrote was that I would want a ton of support. Like I would want a postpartum doula. I would want a nanny. I would want someone to come and like cook for me. But I probably would not be able to afford all of that support.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know about over there, but in Australia, childcare is pretty expensive, like
Here
for
too.
like the average person. So
Yeah.
it's like a day of putting a child into daycare is like 3/4 of your wage for the day, generally for like the average income earner. So it's like it's not even
Here as
worth it in
well.
most cases.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, here as well. Sometimes mothers will just be like, well, I guess I'm not going to work because my whole paycheck is going to have someone else raise my kids, so I might as well just be home with them.
Totally.
And
I
like,
get that.
yeah. But then like some women, they're like, I will still do that because it's like good for my sanity to get out of the house. which I
Yeah, well,
totally
that's another
understand.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
if they don't have any moments to themselves, then you got to weigh it up.
yeah, yeah. When I was babysitting, I remember there was this one mom who had three boys. Now she has four, but I would babysit for her every Thursday, and it was just so she could like go get her nails done and like go hang out with friends and just so she could have time just for herself.
Yeah.
And I remembered like really admiring her for that. I was like 28 at the time. So I was still in the whole mindset of like one day I'm gonna have kids. And would always like look at that and be like, I'm gonna do that. Like I'm gonna be like her.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's very important for them to have time to themselves, but it's just really hard for some of them. Like if you just don't have like the
Yeah.
family support, like the resources to pay for somebody, like what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Honestly, having four boys sounds like an absolute nightmare too.
Right. Okay, then you'll like this. When I was in high school and I would like think about my future and plan out my life, I wanted five kids and I wanted all of them to be boys for some reason. I don't
Why
know why. I don't
you don't?
know. I don't remember.
Wow.
I don't know. I like it sounded fun. You know why? Because I didn't know shit about the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the correct answer, isn't it?
That's the
Like
correct answer.
they're um they're very different. I mean, girls can be just as like much of a handful. I've witnessed that as well, but I think from when they're little, like they're like two, when I've
Hmm.
had them side by side, you would obviously have that experience as well in childcare. Like there's a very distinct chaotic difference that I've witnessed.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really notice a difference, maybe because I worked in the daycare for like 3 years, and I mostly worked with I've worked there during the weekday, so it was kids that weren't in school yet. So like four
Yeah.
months up to like age 4. And I didn't feel like there was too much of a difference then. I
Okay.
did remember noticing like how weird is it that like we tell the girls that they can't play with cars and that it's for boys when like everyone drives. Or like how weird is it that like the baby dolls are given to the girls when like everyone has the responsibility of raising a kid if they choose to have one. And like I remember like just kind of
Mm,
seeing how we kind of like socialize girls and boys differently and how weird that is. I don't know.
mm. I mean, that's a very big topic, isn't it? But definitely, it's like, why can't they play with any toy that they want to? Like, why does it have to be a doll? But yeah,
Yeah. 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 But I could definitely see how, like, boys have more testosterone in their bodies. So, like, that's what's giving them more of that, like,
mm,
wild energy. And I do have
totally.
a little brother who was extremely wild. He was a kid. He was so annoying.
I bet.
But now I love him. I love you, Niall, if you're listening or watching.
Cute. Does he have kids?
He does. He has 2 kids.
Aww.
And I think that kind of makes it a little easier to like feel okay with like not having kids because like one of my siblings already has kids. So like there
Yeah,
are already children in our family. Um family will live on if that like matters.
totally. Yeah, I
But
get
yeah,
that.
it's nice to have kids in the family already. Um
Mm,
that like you don't have to be 24/7 with.
totally. That's the thing, right? I mean, I have nieces and nephews from my like half siblings. Like I have three half siblings. I did enjoy them when well, they were obviously younger and I was younger as well, but now I like them because they're like adults. Like I think
Mm.
the two oldest are like 18 and 19.
Oh
So like
wow.
I can
They're
literally
really
hang out
big.
and have a drink
Yeah.
with them now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But when they were like teenagers and stuff, I was like, I don't really know how to relate to you
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
anymore.
My niece is 7 and or is she 8 now? I think kids also make me realize like how fast time goes because like
I
once there's a
know.
child in the family, you're like, wait, what? How old are they?
Yeah. I know. And you're like, wow, they're already 18. That's what my
Yeah.
experience has been
Oh
like.
my
Mum's
gosh,
like,
I bet.
yeah, so-and-so's turning 18 next week. And I'm like, what? Like, when did that happen?
Yeah, I feel like as like if I was a mom and that was happening, like that my baby was 18, I'd be a whole mess of emotions and grief.
Totally. I like to
It
remind my
sounds so
parents, like,
unfair.
all the time. I'm just like, how do you feel that I'm turning, like, when I was turning 30? I was like, your child is turning 30. How do you feel? And they're like, no, don't remind me. Rub it in a little bit. But my dad has older kids, so, like, I'm the youngest out of, like, all of the kids, you know?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard the term that people use for people who decide not to have kids. I've heard two different terms, and I wonder if you feel any type of way of one of them. One is called childless, and one is child free. And I'm curious if you
Okay.
have any preference.
I don't think I've heard of child free. I think I've only heard of childless. And I think that I would personally use child free because that just sounds so much more empowering to me.
Same. Yeah.
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 But also, I can feel the empowerment in childless for myself personally, also.
Mm, yeah. It's like you're going against what society told you should do.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I feel
That
like
makes
I've been on
sense.
a journey of that, like unraveling that for years. I'm not even surprised that I've kind of gotten to this point. Like, I'm never going to work a 9 to 5. I'm never going to buy a house. In a queer relationship. Like, now I'm like, all right, yeah, not having kids kind of goes along with all of that, doesn't
What else you got?
Totally. Is this just me going against society? Possibly, but no,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
sat with it too long for that.
Mm-hmm. And is like the environment or the climate anything with you with your like decision? Did that have any part?
I don't think so. I think
Mm-hmm.
if I was actively considering having one, I think I would look at that for sure. But I think because I've been so like probably not for a while, I don't think I've even like thought about that. I know some people that have though, like taken that into consideration, but yeah, I haven't. What about you?
Yeah, for me with the climate, I really look at it more of like how many humans exist and like how that is hard on Earth because I think we're at 8 billion already. That is insane.
Yeah,
I don't think we were meant to get to 8 billion ever. Like that's just too much.
I know. Yeah, like it's been gradually increasing, hasn't it? Like I think can't remember the exact figures, but I remember hearing like in the 80s or something how many people were on this earth, and I was like, it was like a lot different. And I was like,
Yes.
what?
Let's look it up.
I can't even
Earth,
imagine that.
I'm Googling it. Earth
Right.
population chart. I do know that the growth has like at some point increased. Like really, I think the word for it is exponentially.
Yeah.
Is that what people say? Yeah, when it just suddenly goes up really steep. Okay. So in 1950, it was 2.7 billion.
Whoa.
Yeah, which was not that was 70 years ago only.
Like since my dad is like 73 or something, like since he has been on this earth, it has gone up that much.
Yeah. And then this chart says July 1st, 1984, 4.7 billion, which that for me,
Whoa.
that's 5 years before I was born. And the latest date that it shows, I have to like toggle on this chart. July 1st, 2023 is 8 billion.
Oh, that was last year. Who knows where we're at now?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on a website called World-O-Meter, and there's a like live count of like births and deaths for today, like what's happening today. And the birth rate is just like up, 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 and then the death rate is like much slower.
Wow. Yeah, I know a lot of people that are pregnant or like just had babies or about to have babies or like it's insane right now. I feel like there's different
Yeah.
stages that I experience this in my reality. Like, have you had that?
Yeah, same. I feel like when I was like 19, 20, a lot of my peers who like were early parents, like had kids really young, like there was a whole group of them pregnant at that time. And then maybe like 3-ish years ago, like during the pandemic, a lot of people got pregnant.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then now it's like the last people left who haven't had kids are like getting one in
Yeah. It's
before the
crazy.
biological clock runs out.
I know, right? Like, yeah, it's crazy. I do have friends that are, I think they've both turned 40 now and they froze their eggs,
Okay.
just in case they want to. But yeah, I think they're probably the only people that I know that are like
Hmm.
not in a relationship, have like chosen not chosen. It's not been a choice, I don't think. I think it's just that it's kind of ended up that way for them.
Okay.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never wanted to do that because I'm already tired right
Yeah.
now. I'm 34 and I'm already tired. And like when I'm 40, like am I gonna have enough energy to raise a kid? I don't know. I don't think so.
I so get that. I'm also very tired.
Life is
Enough.
tiring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Do you ever get like I don't know if it's scared is the right word, but do you ever like wonder like when I'm an old lady and I don't have grandchildren, like am I going to feel sad or like regret that? Do you ever have those thoughts?
No, I haven't. I think if I feel into it now, it's like it's hard for me to imagine that because I feel so solid in my decision right now. So it's like
Mm,
I can't
yeah.
imagine. I don't know. I feel like there's also other ways that you could get that kind of need met as well. Like same as if I was to in 5 years be like, okay, like I want to have some form of child and I decide to foster or adopt. Like you wouldn't obviously do that when you're like 80 years old, but I think there is other ways that like you could
Yeah.
have that if that comes up. I can't even imagine that.
I wonder if that's even allowed when you're 80 years old. Like, do they tell you like, nah, you're too old? Like, is this...
Maybe. Maybe there's an age bracket.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a rule or if it's like if that's considered like discrimination. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like, who are you to say that they don't going to live for another like 30 years?
Yeah, weird.
So weird. Have you thought about that, like yourself at that age?
If you would have asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have been like, yes, I am having children because I want grandchildren when I'm old. But now I don't feel that fear. I feel more like excitement because I'll get to have like community of other senior
Mm,
citizen old ladies who didn't have kids. And like we can
love
be like our own
that.
little Golden Girls gang. I don't know if they have that show over there.
Yes, they do. The ones that.
Yeah, it's such a great show.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just feel like excited. Like that's gonna be like a exclusive club to be a part of like all the older ladies who like never had kids. And
Mm,
I'm excited to be in that.
I love that so much. It's so interesting because I've never even, until this podcast, like I've never even thought about like feeling like I'm not included in things or like I don't like a lot of my friends have kids or are having kids, but I've never been like I don't belong being
Mm,
friends with them. Like, but
yeah.
I think I like the idea of finding like possibly other queer people that have chosen not to have kids as well and just like connecting because you're the first person that I've been like, yes, this is what I believe besides my partner. So I'm like, I feel like I want to keep this conversation going and like, yeah, maybe find a little community.
Yay, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of us out here. There
I love
really
that.
is. Yeah.
Mm.
There's a ton of like Facebook groups and
Mm.
I'm sure like I'm sure there's a way to find these people in person as well. I just I don't know how. I haven't done that yet. And I want to.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I just sort of like another thing I was going to mention earlier when you were talking about the pros and cons list. It's like, imagine how many less people there would be in this world if people just did that to start with, because it's like, you know, it's so easy. I know that it's not actually easy with like getting pregnant. I know that so many things have to be lined up, but it's like how many people just get pregnant and just keep it because they're pregnant. They like, you know, there's a lot of places that abortion is illegal, like things like that. It's like, it would be such a different world. Whereas like my reality is like, that can't happen.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be more of a conscious thing.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't exist.
Yeah,
my mom was 18 when I was
18.
born, and I'm like, my reaction to that was like, I wouldn't be affected because I wouldn't know that I would have never existed.
Totally. Yeah.
Because some people are like, yeah, you would never exist, and it's like, okay, yeah, and I wouldn't know.
No.
Like, and
yeah, I may have come through in a different form. That's so tricky to think about, isn't it? Like, if
I might be like a majestic horse, just galloping.
I look at my cat sometimes and I'm like, fuck, like, why didn't I come back in cat form? It's like a good cat life though, you know, like a loving family.
With a loving owner, yes. Yeah. Sometimes I look at my cats and I'm like, they have a great life. They sleep 20 hours a day. They don't have to go to work.
They get fed.
Yeah. They get pets. Oh my God. One of my cats is very cuddly, and when I start petting him, he's just like, turns into like a rag doll, and he's like purring and stuff, and I'm like, that must feel so good to have a hand the size of your entire back, like just going up and down your entire back. Like, wow.
Yes, I know, right? They have the best lives.
They do.
So jealous. Maybe in another lifetime.
Yeah. Okay, so I know that the last time I had you on this podcast, I asked you the closing questions that I ask everyone, but I want to ask you them again because maybe your answers have changed.
I don't even remember them, so great.
I don't remember either. Okay, so the first question is, what does self-love mean to you?
Self-love means like accepting and loving all parts of myself, not just the ones that I find positive or like acceptable or whatever that even fucking means. But it's like actually loving all the parts that I find like that I try and reject or criticize or that like aren't what society deems as like beauty or perfect. And that's including inside and out.
Beautiful. And then I want to ask you, this isn't one of the closing questions I usually ask, but I want to ask it because it matches with this conversation. If there's someone listening who is maybe on the fence about if they want to commit to being child-free or like wanting to have a kid, they're kind of like, I don't know which one to pick. What's something you would say to that person?
Write a pros list. I think that sounds like not that I've done the physical version of it, but I think like I know in my mind I've done that. I've done like it doesn't outweigh it to me, but like I think after seeing your like physical copy of it, that's just like there's so many more cons on it. Like start there and then like feel into all of them if you could, like you said, like if you did have a child that was special needs, like is that something that you like could deal with, that you could navigate with? Like, do you have the resources for that? Like things like that. So maybe starting there and then journaling from that place. And also just not, I think speaking to other people about it is important to hear their perspective, but just not taking on everyone else's beliefs, especially when it comes to like societal expectations.
Yeah. I think that's the most important part with making the decision is like make the decision for you. And not for like what you think your family wants you to do. Because like I know a lot of people get pressure from families to have a kid. And
totally.
It's also like for me for a while, I thought that like becoming a mother one day was just like a part of being a woman, that like I wasn't a real woman until I
Mm.
had a baby. Um, Especially because, being in the spaces that we are where we learn about like archetypes and stuff, and you learn about like the maiden archetype and then the mother archetype, and it's like, will I get to move on to the other archetypes if I don't have a child? Like, do I
Mm.
get to be in that embodiment of being a mother to myself? I don't know what's happening in my voice. But what has come up for me in that is that, like, I'm committing to parent my inner child rather than an
Mm.
external child.
I love that so much.
Yeah, because I feel like she needed more attention and more love. So like
Mm.
now it's up to me to give her that, and I can like
Mm.
really actually be present with her and give her that. Um,
Beautiful.
and do that instead of like with an external kid. Yeah,
It's
that's
probably a lot
just
less work.
yeah.
More fulfilling for you internally.
Yes, yes. And I
Mm.
and I do see, like, even with the pros and cons list, like I do see how even though I only wrote 13 cons, I can see how like some of these could be really great and could be like enough to like say yes to it. It's just personally not enough for me.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah. Because like even what we said about like watching a little bean like see the like that's like really sweet and really cute. And for some
Yeah,
people, like that's reason enough. They're like, okay, I'm gonna do it.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck to them.
Good luck.
No. Well wishes.
Well, bless your heart.
Yeah. And your journey.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm trying to think what I would say as well to someone on the
Mm.
fence. Um, I feel like we touched on so many things. Um, but I would also add like start asking people in your life who are parents. And if you are the person that would be birthing a kid, like ask people who have been pregnant, like what actually did you go through? Because I feel like
Mm.
so much of it is gate kept, specifically with pregnancy and birth. Like there's so much that I just like slowly learned throughout the years that I
Mhm.
didn't know about. Um, and I feel like we need to know the actual facts of like what exactly you're going to go through in order to be like, okay, I can deal with that, or like, okay, that's not for me.
Totally. Yeah, I think one of my friends just listened to like a whole bunch of different podcasts and stuff around it, like, like home births, like in hospital births, all the different variations, just to get like a good idea of what was gonna possibly happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good idea. Do that.
Hmm. Yeah, and definitely asking people that have been through it. That's great. Great advice.
Yeah. So, would you like to share where people can find you and then maybe talk a little bit about your work and like how you support and serve people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Instagram's probably the best. My handle is at I am Caitlin Rose _. I mostly, well, at the moment, I'm working more with people around like their body image, confidence, like connecting with their vulvas, being seen, all of that. I'm about to move into a whole different, not a whole different, but moving more into like supporting people in queer, either in relationships or single that are wanting to deepen their relationships and like
Mm,
allow themselves to be seen, to be vulnerable, like allow people to, like letting people in a lot more. So there'll still be some body image and some vulva connection and all of that, but it's just going to be like a little bit deeper. So Instagram is the best place for that because that's where I feel the most.
awesome. Very nice. Thank you for spending time with me today and having a conversation that is, I don't think that a conversation like this happens enough.
Hmm.
It's such a sensitive topic. It's such a triggering topic for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
I feel like you brought a lot of like, we laughed a lot. I feel like you brought a lot of fun into it. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. It was like, yeah, it was really nice for me to be able to like share this like with somebody else that's on the same page and to also just like claim my desires or where I'm at with it all.
Yeah, I'm so glad I could do that for you.
Hmm. Thank you.
And then for those of you who are still watching all the way until the end, I want to show you the shirt that I was hiding. This is an actual convenience store in Colorado. It's like a 7-Eleven type of store. And my husband and I came across it when we did a road trip from New Jersey to California. And as soon as we saw it, we're like, what? That's amazing. We have to get a shirt as a souvenir. So I hope you enjoyed that little tidbit. Okay, that is all.